This is day 4 of the August 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. Here are the questions and comments from the last day or so. This is a collective of put into one question. Listening to you, it sounds as though memory is bad. These are different people saying it. Thought is bad. Inattention is bad. The other day, there was a feeling in talking about commenting storyline that writing is bad. In giving attention to something, who is the witness? Or in observing something, who is the witness? I see a difference between awareness and attention. It is clear that in awareness there is no special effort made. The sounds, the breath, the physical sensations are just there. But to attend to a question that is coming up, like who is listening, or what is this pain in the chest, there is a definite effort to attend carefully. What is desire? Why do I sit? This question came up with several people. Sitting quietly, observing thoughts, the thought comes up, so what? Stepping outside and hearing the crickets, one realizes we are dead most of the time. Then, sitting, the mind always wants to zero in on one thing, straining to get something. Sitting for a few days, one always expects a reward, and then there is the voice, you only get out of it what you put into it. So one wonders if one is doing enough. Yesterday you said that thought cannot solve the problem it creates. I don't get it. Why doesn't thinking through something solve a problem? You say no effort, just listen. But how do I negotiate my way through a big city with millions of people, a crazy work schedule from morning till into the night? If there's nothing to do, no goal, no attainment, why am I not sitting on the beach with my family? In the group meeting last night, it was said that there is not even being in this moment. So what is left? You talk about aliveness, and I immediately feel I want that. Let's take the very first thing first. Maybe we don't need to spend much time on it. I did warn in the very beginning of the retreat, in the first talk, to beware of the mind that when it hears something, attributes goodness or badness to it, or to the one who's saying it, that I'm saying thought is bad or memory is bad. It's bad to be inattentive. It's good to have no thoughts. It's good to have no memory. It's good to have awareness all the time. This is what the trained brain attributes, the categories of right and wrong. It has no precedence in its training to look at something without immediately having a standard by which to judge it. Because there's some of that in scientific training. And yet very often one's research also goes to prove some paradigm. Can one listen to a question about thinking, or listen to someone saying when thought is quiet, without the implication it's bad when it's there? I should be rid of it, because one has read so much about this to all the spiritual traditions. In one way or another, designate thought as the enemy. Cut it off, chop it off at the root. What this place was created for is to look at what is going on in ourselves, to look at thought, to look at inattention, to look at writing, commenting, at memory. I'm not saying it's bad or good, but how does it function? What are its consequences? What is going on at the same time? One person mentioned that, just recall this right now, that at the moment there was really, truly the question, what is inattention? Not, I shouldn't be inattentive, but what is inattention? There was a different kind of listening and looking. And what revealed itself was that when there is thought, there is no attention. Not that it's bad, but that it is so. But we went on from there. It's not, one cannot generalize it that whenever there's thought, there is never attention, because right now there is attention. There's awareness of the crickets, of the fans, of the heartbeat, people sitting here, some sounds from people, sensations in the body, and yet there is talking, based on some memory, at least the memory of the language, but much more than that. Memory of what one said, what the questions were. Maybe an example will come up, the files will offer an example. And that does not deflect the attention or the awareness. So in that state of awareness, when it is not all concerned with how am I coming off, am I doing, am I good or bad, when that is quiet, not in the way, then memory or thought is operating helpfully to keep the language going so one doesn't forget it, to supply words, sometimes stopping for looking for words, and there it is. The brain is very cooperative, supplying words. Maybe sometimes it's not quite the right word. And without memory, this talk could not take place. If I ever get the Alzheimer's disease, there will be no more talks. So, can one be flexibly, lightly looking whether an action was based on a memory which was so firmly entrenched and not questioned, not even seen as a memory? I know the way you are, and this is how I'm addressing you right now, because of what I remember about you. That's compulsive memory, unexamined, unlistened to as something that is not to be accepted unquestionably, remembered scenes and images. But in talking to you, if I remember that you're not feeling well, you have a backache or something, I may take that into consideration. I don't know why this is coming up right now. Maybe wondering whether the chair is comfortable, or it can be helpful to remember something about someone. Person needs some care, some consideration. So when someone said that there are different qualities of memory, some that are just driving darkly, dimly, and others which are clearly seen for what they are and yet very helpful. One person said that in listening to a bird, the word bird or crow came up, but it was no interference with the listening. At other times, the memory may come up and captivate. Something becomes important. Do I know my birds, for instance? Maybe others do. I should be as good. Somebody once told me that it's the most competitive bunch of people, the bird watcher. It made memories clear of riding with friends who had notebooks with them in the moment they saw a bird writing it down. I wondered at the time. Great energy put into that. And at that moment is the sound and flight of the bird, the colors, and the whole thing. Is that there, or is it important that I saw this bird and will tell others? And not just the others like that, we're all like that at times. So does that illustrate or illumine the function of memory? The different ways of functioning? Not, and if it's said or heard it's bad, then we can't find all of that out. About writing, where does the urge come from? Is that taboo to ask? One can ask it. One may have resistance to asking it, but one can ask it and watch. And is the writing trying to convey what one is seeing or thinking very clearly, what one likes to share? Writing about something someone else may have no idea about, never heard about it, and communicating that. And in looking over writing, recently, two of us were working over a piece of writing. It was a very wonderful time. The person was very open, brought this piece of writing, and we were looking at why was this put this way. I do this myself when I write, so I don't consider myself a writer. But I look over and over and go over to, no, this is not exactly how it is, or there's just something I want to push, and let it drop out so the thing cleanses itself. I'm not saying sometimes one is trying to push something, and is it clear? Some of the most helpful things in my life have happened because I read something that somebody else wrote very clearly, accessibly, free of a lot of the accoutrements of personality. So can we leave that? And come to this which is right now all over the place in this mind, which is our common mind. What about this thing of effort? What is the meaning of sitting? Why do I sit? always want to get something, always try to focus the mind on something. And if, as you seem to say, there is nothing, there is no goal, then what's the use? What am I doing this for? We need to ask that, don't we, of anything. And particularly here in this airy, bright, spacious hall, questions like this may come up as one does sit quietly at times. Why am I doing this? And the question can come in different ways, either out of a real interest. Here I am and here we are. Why? Let's find out. The question being an impetus, an invitation to look openly, not having all kind of preconceived ideas. Or else the question may come as an exclamation of exasperation or disappointment, which some people have told me. If there's no goal, and I'm not supposed to make any effort, or if there's nothing to attain, then why the hell am I doing it? And the one question does not necessarily end in despair, and that's that. It can also pick up again and become a question of inquiry. From exclamation to inquiry. So why the sitting and this thing of the effort? Let's take that one that somebody approached it. I haven't ever used the two words this way, but it's a good way of using them. Awareness being this open there-ness or here-ness or is-ness or suchness. The sounds, the breath, the sensations, the sights, the light, even though the eyes are closed right now, there's light, it's clear. And maybe we can agree that right this instant, just listening, it's not an effort, is it? Things are there. The perception is there, even though maybe the next moment the doubt may come in, am I perceiving as clearly as someone else? But that can be perceived. And then the person said, if a question comes up, or this pain in the chest or solar plexus that's been there for a long, long time, and finally the question comes up, what is this? Not just I don't like it or I'm repressing it, distracting myself from it, but what is this? That is what I call attention, and for that I feel that some effort is needed to even climb into that, enter into that question, into this area. And in listening to the way the person said it, and memory coming up of the day, the morning or the day before, when we were sitting here and there was this lovely breeze in the trees, the leaves rustling, and the cool air on the skin, the sound of millions of insects. I almost said, let's not have a talk, let's just sit. I don't want to make this effort of now starting to bring a look at the question. Is it effort, or can one say, because that word effort I reserve for if I have a goal, then I have to apply myself, a motive to be good, to attain something. That's how I'll define effort right now. But what is a fact is that energy needs to be applied to looking, talking. It's a tremendous application of energy. And listening too, to listen to somebody talk without the mind veering off all the time. I remember from listening to such talks, and people tell me that, it can be quite exhausting if one's really going with it. And at the same time, energy is created or emerges out of this. This is the unfathomable thing. The application or putting in of energy and the arising of energy. But at the first moment, there was a certain just wanting to stay with listening and being together here. And not using energy to start a question. So, are we together on this? That to look at something that's there, and maybe is beckoning to be looked at, to be heard and felt. There may be an inertia there, a resistance to it. I don't want to. But one can start with listening to the resistance, can't one? That is the start. Often we want to jump ahead. I want to get at this thing immediately, but what's there is a lot of resistance. So that's what's there to be looked at and felt, touched, contacted in the body, in the mind, the thought, I don't want to. I hate it. I want to be rid of it. And those thoughts are accompanied like a singer by the piano or a violin by the whole orchestra, by this body. I don't want to. There's a physical response to it. And can that be detected? The resistance, the tension, the bracing against this pain or discomfort, mental or emotional or sensational. Feel the resistance palpably, maybe vaguely, and wonder about it, whether it needs to be there. What is it protecting? One wants to find out what's there. So protection is not needed. One is interested. The energy is there to look and listen and contact the dis-ease. So resistance, which is very habitual by now, is not a conscious intention. The body has learned over the years to resist pain and discomfort. And so has the mind, the thoughts. But when I want to find out something, I don't need resistance. I see it's there and I question it. And it may melt away in the looking, in the questioning it, and in wanting to touch what it is that it is protecting. Does that make sense? Or may not be a physical disease. It's like one person said, I wanted to find out what is inattention. And she said, it was quite amazing. It wasn't the usual attending to something. It was very immediate and direct, and something revealed itself. That when there's sticky thought, there's no attention. That's a tremendous discovery, which one hasn't taken over because somebody says it. It's seen here for oneself. And the seeing of that is not just thinking about it, even though now we're talking about it and can think about the fact. But in that case, I take it from the way it was said, it was a direct insight, a direct seeing. So there's a difference between seeing and thinking. Can one discern that difference for oneself? And if one can't leave that question sticking there in the mind, what is the difference? What is this all about? It is such questions which really speak to the curiosity or get the curiosity going, that bring about attention. I want to find out something and not just read about it or have somebody tell me about it, but I want to find out firsthand. I need to look and listen. It is as simple as that. Children do that all the time. They want to find out everything about the objects around them. They don't ask, what is this, and ask for a name. That's what we supply to them, and then they delight in this game of parents giving names and repeating names. But in the beginning, it's just grabbing and banging and licking. Throwing. Don't throw things, we say. Don't throw, that's bad. So the throwing has been initiated. So that this thing can come to life again. Maybe by just hearing a cricket. What is the walking outdoors? Not just thinking I'm walking, I'm taking a walk. We can think that and never feel the gravel under the shoes. But when the question comes up, what is going on right now? What is walking in the night? Then maybe suddenly the eyes and ears will open and the sense of touch will be there for the raspy sound and maybe sliding on the stone every once in a while. And the night air, the light of this yellow moon, the deafening sound, someone said, the deafening sound of the crickets. So to give attention to what is going on this moment in the mind and the body, whether we're moving around eating or defecating, urinating, washing, drying, to give attention to that is energy. Just to look at it, not even with the aim of becoming enlightened or getting a reward, just because something is there. The little hill is there and the little kid already wants to climb it and climbs up of it. Remember our grandson, when he did that, for 10 minutes at least, up and down, a little incline. He could hardly walk. But this was so pleasurable. Climb up and then the acceleration downhill, sometimes rolling. Doing it over and over, or going into a little grove of trees out of a very sunny Denver day, very hot, and there's this little grove. So he'd walk into it and out of it, and into it and out of it, and back in and out. He didn't say, oh, it's shady or it's cool. They didn't have the words yet. But something was noticed. And going by a truck in a little parking lot and going over those hubcaps. I wouldn't have let my son do that, but the grandson could do it. Going around. The traces of the fingers, they look different when something is very dirty. He noticed all of that, or sitting down. I've mentioned it before, but it was so neat. We were walking on an icy evening. It was dark already. Just through the streets. And there was a lantern, and it made a little ring of light on the ice. It was shiny and sparkling. He said, Grandma, let's sit down. So he sat down on this little icy light. I didn't. I just stood there. I didn't have snow pants on. Have we lost all that? I don't think so. It can come back. Or come anew. Come back is nothing, you can't go back. But can it come anew? People are saying that all of a sudden walking through the woods, I noticed some mosses. I didn't see them before. Every day I seem to see something more that I never noticed before. Because as we've talked about in an earlier talk, somebody else put it that way, when the mind is emotionally involved with itself, it doesn't see anything or anybody. It's closed. The shutters are down. So why do we sit? Why does one sit? For this question to come up. And not to answer it, but to observe. In a quiet room, maybe alone, sitting alone, or with people, quietly, spaciously, because relatively crowded, but there's still a lot of space in here, high ceiling, a lot of windows, and the outdoors is right there. Or sitting out on the bench or on the steps. Why does one sit? Apart from what one has read and heard and been instructed to do in sitting, or what the fruits of sitting will be that one has read about and has wanted. But can one put this question to oneself and then let it reveal itself? In talking with one person this morning about it, or whenever, the memory came up of the first time coming back from a Sunday Rochester sitting. At that time we didn't have all the throughways. It was a long drive, about 2 hours. 2 hours in and then 2 hours of sitting. There's a talk there, something, coming back. And in opening the door and opening the garage, or we didn't have a garage opener at that time where you just push a little machine, I noticed the energy of lifting up that garage door. I noticed that. I was amazed. I was in good spirits too. And as I recollected, I didn't have any ideas of gaining enlightenment or something like this. It was just having sat for 2 hours, there was some energy there. At the time I was 40, there was what is called the mid-age crisis. Which one shouldn't even think in those terms, but we do whenever we feel it maybe. Felt fatigued a lot, tired a lot. And all of a sudden, there was energy. Also, I cleaned underneath the kitchen sink. I always thought I was a very clean person, but that was one area I did not look and did not want to look. It was rusting out and stuff. There was the energy to look, to see what needed to be done and do it. Now, does this become a goal? I'm just reporting right now because I'm asking why do I sit, or did I sit? And there was this palpable thing of energy and seeing something and doing it, which I had avoided. If I was to make a more general statement about how I feel, what I feel about sitting or being quiet, this is without a problem, just sitting quietly. It is like as one showers and the good feeling of having showered, washed with water, maybe soap, cleaned the teeth, the good feeling of having cleaned the teeth. And sitting quietly it feels like a cleansing. I don't mean moralistically or spiritually or so. It just feels like that. Having been silent and sat in silence and heard the sounds of the silence all around one, inside one, having that contact, that touch, There's something about that. Maybe the word cleansing can be too much interpreted in terms of cleansing of sin or whatever all these meanings are. We're so little in touch with quietness, with silence. Even in this place here, when we're living here, very little of it outside of retreat. Maybe for individual people. As a group, we don't sit together except Sunday mornings when I'm here. There's so little of it, and so much stimulation by artificial means. I'm not saying that's bad. It's marvelous to listen to music or a good program, a good movie. Be together and discuss it and enjoy it. I love to discuss when something comes up, a question comes up. Enjoy that a lot. And in that there's also can be a real energy, communal energy of really looking at something together. Hearing different inputs. People who come as guests, it's nice to hear someone from the outside, the so-called outside. And it was very helpful for people living here very closely together, for people to come from the outside and say something which maybe hasn't popped up here, because we're always the same people.
But then there's also the absence of all of that stimulation, of which we have so little. This is the rarest commodity there is, so it should be the most expensive. Why? Is there a hump? Seems almost as though there's the hump of forgetting about it. Sometimes walk down to the apartment and come by this sitting room, all large, all dark, just the exit sign on. I had forgotten about that it was there. Then I go in and sit quietly, maybe the fireflies, some sound, and nothing that is demanding of the attention. Just stillness, quietness, silence. The touch of that, the non-dividedness of it all. That's one way of sitting, just the stillness. That maybe we need that too, who knows? Animals sit quietly. When they don't have to eat or mate or feed young, which is rare enough, then they sit quietly. Or when they're injured, they sit quietly, very quietly and still. An injured animal. And with that we come to maybe another thing of sitting, when we're injured. The animal knows instinctively to sit quietly with an injury, because if we're very sick, high fever, then the body also knows not to move to lie in bed. Although sometimes people, even with a fever, still go to work, because they have to be there. Want to be there, don't want to be in bed, need to work. And the body is beckoning. It says, whoa, hold it. Lie down. Be with it. Be with me. So when we're injured physically or emotionally, psychologically, the habitual response is to go do something about it, or distract ourselves from it through stimulation of some kind or other. But another way is to listen to it quietly. And when we find that this injured state is beckoning to be listened to and looked at quietly. To not be resisted, not be swept under the rug, denied, but to be allowed to be there as it is, not as it should be. So if there's inner turmoil of whatever kind, isn't sitting quietly with it in the midst of it, isn't that natural? You'd say, well, what do you mean by putting that word on it? Well, we're using words. You can put it differently. Just, what is going on? And the intimacy of listening to what's there without resistance or denial, or the goal of getting through it. One feels at a moment like that, any of that is too much, it's extra, it's waste of energy, which is better used just being here with the whole thing. Seeing the thoughts that feed the condition, seeing the thoughts that come out of the condition. Listening to all of that, impartially. And if one notices the idea, when will this be over, when will I be done with it, to realize what that does to the undivided attention. It's already divided then, in an end state, and this, and the drive toward the end state. That's divided energy. One can find that out. One doesn't have to hear a talk and then believe it or fight it. Because one can do that too. But it's not the same as first-hand seeing, experiencing for oneself. See, in a moment of intimacy with what's there, not bracing against it, hemming it in through resistance, I don't want to feel it, feeling that resistance and therefore opening up to what's there. In such a moment of witness or being there as one is, there is no time. Unless the thought says, when will this be over? That thought creates the pressure of time. And with that, the mind and the world is divided. Now and tomorrow, sooner or later. The impatience of it. The whole pain of time. Which is not there, it's absent when the time thought is quiet. And there's just this unconditional, what's there? Not conditioned by the thought of time, when will it be over? What will my future be if I get through this? Will I be enlightened or will I be free of problems forever? Oh, this brings up the question that some people mentioned, spoke to their condition. How many more thousand times will I have to look at something? Somebody asked. Looked at it 1,000 times. How many more 1,000 times? Before it changes. Or before I change it. I don't know quite how it's put. You look at it as many times as it comes up. That's simple. And it relieves the pressure, doesn't it? The pressure of the exclamation and all that goes with it. Oh my God. Thinking of 1,000 more pains. That's a burden. But the other is free, and every time it'll come up, I look at it. I meet it. If conditions make it possible, may not. I don't know now. How do I know? But I'll meet it and be done with it. And you say, well, wait a minute, but I've never been done with it. Maybe because you thought of the 999 times, it would come up again. And going so humbly with it, is that a good word? Simply, non-demandingly.
Just it's there it is. No one divided from it. If one can be with a pain like that, it does change. If it's something that takes the body time, we've talked about that yesterday, then let that body take care of it. It has tremendous intelligence to heal, to come to balance. If it's anger or fear, meet it now and not worry about tomorrow. And if it abates now, let go of it. Often we find we're holding on to our sad stories. We live by them. That's our sustenance, our identification. My sad, heavy past. In one way wanting to be rid of it, and on the other hand clinging to it. Because what will I be without it? It protects me from changing. Is that it? From having to change? I'm just throwing that out. If there is this clinging to, I used to do that myself. I had to tell everybody about my past. How horrid it was, and difficult, and spectacular, bombing raids I'm going on right now. What my father was, I had to tell people that. And it dropped away. It's no clinging to it. Because somebody asks and the energy is put into it to go into it and give tidbits or relate something. But it's nothing that is clutched and clung to as an identity the way it used to be, heavily. It's not needed anymore. I don't need protection of this kind. One meets one's vulnerabilities face on, alone or in public. Some people more inclined to do it in public, others more inclined to do it privately, to themselves. And seeing something, can it be finished and not add to the story of my hard life? Be free of that, be light with being there now, with what comes up. We can do that, it's possible. Find out. We will end here for today.